Okay, hello, hello. Here I am again. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was sick, and then I had some other stuff to do, other than materials, and also that I was sick again, and then the heat wave came. So, so yeah, this is an older material. I think I was messing with this like a month ago. It was sort of a learning experience for me, both in terms of, well, making a good looking wood material base, right? Like the grain and the fibers and your knots and, imperfections that are, accurate to wood. So it was like the first time I tried something like that, and I think it like turned out pretty good overall. I just think the planks themselves need a lot more work, but I took it as an experiment, right? So I didn't really spend too much time polishing this. I think I already did a stream on this. I was working on the color without commentary or anything. You can find it, on my channel in the history, if you like. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if you can hear. I'm a bit tired because it's almost impossible to sleep here these days in Prague. There's a massive heat wave, as I said. It's even worse in Germany, but it's pretty bad here as well. So yeah, um, I'll try to get back in the game. Try to get back into 3D after a short hiatus of a week or two. So yeah, let's see if I still remember what I did on this material. And of course, if you have any questions, any objections, whatever, let me know. Also, let me know if you can hear me okay, Mike. Yeah. So yeah, just to introduce the material a little bit, it's really not that complicated. Actually, let me see if I can find the reference. I only had one image. Let's see. So, okay, I think I deleted my my file. Let's see if I can find it again. I think I went onto Unsplash. Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, this was my reference. Can you guys see? Yes, you can see. So that's the reference. You can see that these are like I don't know. I guess wood that's like raw, but at the same time it has been treated. It's probably like fairly smooth, and you can see that it like changes color or changed color based on some weathering. I don't know if this is like an effect of smoke, or maybe it's an effect of like mold. And this right here, it looks to me like it was what's it called, varnished. I think varnish is the lacquered or something like that. There's this word where like you put a layer, basically a clear coat layer, but it also changes the color a little bit sometimes depending on what kind you get. So if you get like a transparent varnish, all you get is like a reflective layer, but you can also have it's called differently in English. I can't remember, but it's basically like a surface treatment that sort of changes the color of the wood a little bit, and I think that's what this might be, or it's just another, like maybe this is under the roof, and yeah, and maybe we get like different weathering effects essentially. But yeah, so like my reference was mostly like this middle part with like uh, additional colors from the bottom and the upper part. And so this is about the level of damage I was looking for. So we have some scratches, we have some discoloration here and there, we have these little knots, we have these like large fibers, we also have like more little scratches, like maybe maybe someone walked on this if it's not a wall. I don't know. I was thinking more of a floor than yeah, than a wall, but this looks to me like a wall. But it doesn't matter, right? Like it was just mostly about like simulating the fibers, and you can see that the fibers have this like very natural flow around the knots. So the knots, they are essentially your branches, right? That have been like cut off, and so there are like a lot of ways to simulate this, to do this in InstaMAT. I didn't spend too much time on this. I was more focused on making the fibers look good. So I'll show you a technique for that, and I also mention a few other ways of going about this. Yes, stain or varnish. Yes, thank you, Mike. Thank you, thank you. It's not a word I use very often in English, you know. Anyhow, yeah, what is the material that's very noisy, and most of the noise doesn't happen in the height map, even though I try to exaggerate it in the height map a little bit. So my planks are like really rough. They are actually quite smooth, but all of it happens in color, or almost all of it happens in color. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, so that was the reference. Let me just close it. And so this is what I get. I'm actually going to show you the various channels we have. So this is the color. So if you look at this, like this is much darker, obviously. You have these like burnt parts. I might do some more to sort of sell this effect. And there are these like super dark brown parts. I didn't want them, honestly. Like, how would you make that tile was my question, right? And if you make that tile, it doesn't make much sense that like one side is brown and one side is black too much. So I just use it to introduce like subtle variation instead of like overall variation that changes the color of the whole material on one side and the other, right? Like we are still making a tileable texture, at least in this case. So it's mostly this, really, for the colors. All right. So that's the base color. Anyway, I think it needs a bit more contrast and like maybe a bit more variation in the like super darks and the whites. Right now it's a bit too light, I guess, especially the notes need to be a bit darker, I think. It's a bit, it's kind of difficult. Also, it kind of depends on what kind of wood you have. I'm no expert on wood at all, so I had no idea what I'm looking at, you know? I don't know if this is like a pine tree wood or what is this, you know? So I don't know. All right. Anyway, moving on. So this is the roughness. Nothing too special. In fact, I think I'm looking at it now. I think it should be rougher. Yeah, it should probably be generally like more on the white side. Yeah, maybe we can adjust that as well. Moving on. That's the normal. As you can see, I have a lot of height information or normal information there. It's maybe too much, but I really wanted to study the effect that it's like a freshly cut wood, maybe worn a little bit on the surface, but essentially untreated or like almost untreated. So I like deviated quite a bit from my reference in that sense. All right. Also, like I tried to do a lot of like edge damage, and it didn't go so well. Like I wouldn't go. I would use different textures, different noises to drive this this time around, or like next time. And yeah, it's like you know, these weird shapes. Like they don't make much sense to me. It's not really the kind of damage you would see on wood. I think it's a bit too smooth and at the same time too deep. So yeah. Maybe an improvement to be done there. Okay, that's the height map. Nothing too special, right? Ambient occlusion. Again, like this is way too much in my opinion, especially here. Like that's just a weird shape. If it was straight, then maybe that could have been justified, but yeah, not too fond of that. All right, so that's the material. If we tile it a few times, you can see that it like becomes a pretty good looking floor unless you look too closely at the details, right? But so this is something that's supposed to be tiled, right? Like it's if you just have this, it looks weird. But if you go a couple of repetitions, you can see that it like makes a bit more sense. And also you can see the problem with like having one side of the material black and just one side, because it creates stripes. Yeah, it's like you definitely see the tiling because it's on the edges, right? So again, maybe something that needs to be broken up even more, and or maybe just drop the idea of having this like black layer, on it, because it, it doesn't tile well. All right, so I'm gonna show you on a different. Well, yeah. So here you can see. Also, I think the planks in general, they should be a bit tighter. There shouldn't be so much of a gap. So that's something to think about next time as well. Again, this was mostly just an experiment. Okay, it's not like I'm presenting you a super fleshed out material, right? Not at all. All right. That being said, we can get to it. So this is the graph. Starting here, we have of course, the color, which isn't that complicated if you look at it. It's like just about the standard amount of nodes for color. Then we have about the same amount of nodes for roughness. You already know my workflow. It's like I try to sort of work the color and the roughness sort of at the same time, or rather, I first finish the color and then I take the information I isolated for the color and reuse it in the roughness. And yeah, we have a lot of height information here that drives all of it, some flood fills, and so on and so forth. Okay, yeah, I should mention there is this wood base node or like material. You can find this, I don't remember, I think in the raw wood material of in the InstaMAT library. And yeah, it's actually pretty nice. I took it as a sort of a vantage point, or what's it called, like a point of departure. And I especially liked what he did with what the author did with the gradient maps, right? So he essentially created a gradient linear and fed it as the gradient into a gradient map. Be careful. Right now there is a bug with gradient map. If you try to turn it off and on, it will crash InstaMAT. So basically, you mustn't turn it off and on. Yeah, just be careful. And it's I think it actually happened to me both with the color and the grayscale version of the node. But Dan was able to replicate it with the grayscale map a lot. So yeah, this is how you create the knots, so sort of, or like the large scale fibers, like this kind of pattern right here. I don't know if you can see it on the left. Let me just make it a bit larger, so you can see that here, like we have these like little waves, right? But it doesn't really blend naturally with the overall directionality of the noise, and that's the biggest challenge, right? It's easy to create knots with shape scatters. You can do better than creating a gradient, right? Like you can create a whole, I think there is a, come on, InstaMAT, please. Oh shoot, what happened there? Okay, my InstaMAT just went crazy. All right, here we go. I think there is a, node that actually has some presets for wood. Now I don't know what it's called, but I think you can find a setup that uses Cartesian to polar mapper. I can actually show you quickly. So let's say we are actually gonna switch to 2K for now, so that we can move faster. All right, so let's say you take some directional noise, for example. Directional noise, let's use this one. And then you use the polar mapper. And what it does, it sort of turns, spins it a little bit. And this is how you would create your basic knot shapes. And you can do something similar. I just need to rotate it. Yeah, and it's gonna look like this. And so if you play with the settings on this and blend it together, you're gonna start getting like a cracks or basically your knot pattern that will go from the center. So if you then blend it with some I don't know, like little crack lines, or I don't know, if you look at the reference again, I don't know, it's a little small, but let's say, I don't know, I can't zoom in anymore, but you can see that there are like lines in the middle, right? So you can do that, you can play with that, and it's actually not that difficult to create. I think you can see it here, right? Like there's one line, two lines, there's like some noise in there, some color differentiation. I did it, like, I know how to do this, so I didn't like focus on that. So I didn't do that much, but it's very easy to do a shape scatter or a guided scatter, essentially, and then have that drive your warps so that your directional lines will sort of bend around it. You can see it here, right? Like this is a pretty good base for wood. So you have the knots here in the middle, right? And you can see that if you feed it into the if you feed this map that looks like this into this warp node, it will bend the lines around it. So that's one technique. And this is, I guess this is very commonly known, well known. It's an easy way to approach this. But again, like if you look at this, the blending might be a bit unnatural, right? Like no knot looks like this. This is mostly like the large fiber in there, and this would be the small fibers. So I was thinking about how to combine another technique I saw somewhere. I don't remember where I had seen it, but yeah, and approaches from this material. Other than that, it's mostly just like a lot of directional noises and like high frequency noises such as clouds or I don't know, your anisotropic noises, stuff like that. That like you just like layer it again and again and again, and you get something that's like fairly convincing as wood. So again, I don't love how this like doesn't blend too well, but it's especially from like far away, it looks convincing, I would say. Yeah, he does this a couple of times for various aspects of the material. It's just a base that then gets reused in a couple of the wood materials in the library. So you can check it out yourself if you go to InstaMAT. All right. So my approach was similar yet different. So let's begin, right? Let me make this smaller. Let's focus in. All right, so I start. Oh my God, I clicked it. Oh my God, all right. So we have a just a circle, essentially a gradient. In Substance Designer, you would probably use something like what's it called, the hemisphere or the paraboloid or something like that. There's like a gradient shape that you have by default. Here you just use the softness. You can adjust the curve. It's not that important. You just want a little bit of blur, a little bit of transition there. And I'm using 3 tile scatters. The first one is I guess the most important one, because it creates these super long and large shapes, which will have like a very stretched gradient, and that in turn creates these large sort of wavy fibers in there that blend into each other, right? Like this shape right here, and this, and this. That's the result of this. It may not look like that, just yet, but that's what it is. So the settings here are actually quite insane, right? Like I have like 10 in the vertical direction, I'm using the maximum blending mode. I actually don't use much of a luminance variance because I don't want to overdo it, right? Like any transition will be detected by the gradient map here, right? Like if you look at this, this is what it looks like. It's a bit nuts, isn't it? Right? And everything is like here. That's kind of unnatural here, like how it intersects. So I didn't want too much variation there because because that wouldn't look good. So yeah, I've got this tile scatter here, number one. And I'm just like slow blurring it a little bit to introduce some variation here and there. So it's like a bit wobbly. Really not much, right? Like 20% no blur, but I'm using some soft Perlin noise. It's really not that prominent, right? It's just a little to wobble it up a little bit. Yeah, and that's it for the large shapes. Because we now have to subtract the smaller shapes that will represent the knots, right? So we create a tile scatter with some randomness, some stretching, you know, some softness variation, stuff like that, at two different sizes, like a really small one and a really large one. I guess you could do an iterate at the risk of having them intersect. So I actually decided to split them, right? They still intersect in some seeds, right? Like maybe an iterate would have been enough. And I do the same, more or less. I just like slow blur it a little bit to introduce some variation. You know, you can see that it's like squished here and there. And on this, it's like almost too blurred. I don't know, it starts looking a bit like pebbles or something like that, but that's fine, right? Blur it a little bit more just to remove any harsh edges. And then I blend this together, add this together. And then I just do an overall warp. I don't think it does anything actually. It's like set to such a low value. Yeah, it's like unimportant, not necessary. Blur it even more. I realized, like testing the blend mode together with like the gradient map. I had to blur it a lot more to get like some prominent shapes here and there, right? And then I am subtracting this white information from this, right? So it sort of pre-softens the gradient, which will then be used to remap the lines, the fibers onto. And then I just put in the white back in, right? But this one is unblurred. So essentially the softening has like a really blurry shape, and this just puts the white back in. And remember, this is already a gradient, so like it's going to do lines like this, and then it's going to do lines like this, and like moving it forward. Like it's essentially a like a slope warp, right? Like it's going like the direction of the gradient will. How do I explain this? Yeah, so you get a slope, right? Like one white and a gradient towards 0. And what the gradient map does, it takes those values and tries to remap this gradient onto it. And so if you notice, my gradient is first of all quantized. So it creates like steps, right? And I also used curves to make it a bit more logarithmic, or it's probably not the right word, but non-linear essentially. So that it becomes like the distance of the various like fibers is bigger the further away it is from the white value, right? Like whatever is white will get this like black thingy, and whatever is black will get this white thingy. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not very articulate. Thingy is not a word, but yeah. Also, it doesn't really matter. But like I'm trying to explain that the way the slopes look here will dictate how your lines will be spread. Right? Like it's kind of tight on the like on the outside and fairly large in the middle. Anyhow, yeah, that's our like blurry gradient that will be used to remap the stuff. I just auto leveled it to get the full range, so that the gradient map really like applies the full range of the gradient. Now for this, so yeah, we get a gradient linear, and you have to rotate it because the way InstaMAT works, it looks at the middle line of pixels and middle row of pixels from left to right for the gradient map, right? For this gradient value, it looks here and goes here. So that's why we have to rotate it. And it really matters what you have here. You can see that this is my curve, right? And we have quantize. Quantize will create steps based on this count from any any grayscale map for the most part, right? We edge detect it because we only want the lines for the gradient. Yeah? But this is still like too large for the gradient, right? Like we want something very fine to simulate the fibers. And so I couldn't really like get what I wanted with transforms. So I actually opted for something fairly expensive, and I used the flat fill and the flat fill mapper. So what flat fill mapper does, it takes the UV island or the flat fill island that you isolate with your flat fill node and remaps an image onto it. Yeah, so if you use the input, it remaps an image here, and so what I have is like a sort of stretching pattern of 4 of these little gradients remapped onto every segment that I have here. It's just a way to make it more detailed, really. Then, what did I do here? Transform. Oh yeah, I just flipped it. I flipped it. I realized that I wanted the bigger part to be on the 0 value in the gradient map. Yeah, I blurred it a little bit because these transitions were a little bit too harsh, right? So I blurred it just like 2% just to take off the edges. And yeah, and that's what we are feeding into the gradient map. And the result of this is that you get sort of both the knots and the natural flow of the fibers around them at the same time, right? Like instead of trying to scatter the shapes, your pre-made shapes, right? Maybe it would look better, right? Like it would be more of a knot shape instead of just some circles. But for what I was going for, it was good enough, and like you get this really noisy mess, which on its own like actually works out quite well. And obviously you will cover it with a lot of noise down the line. So I thought maybe it doesn't matter, you know. But what I really liked about this method was that you get this natural flow of things. Like sometimes you get this weird transition, but that's unavoidable. Or at least I haven't found a way to really like make a good looking gradient. So yeah, that's the basic workflow for your fibers, right? And because I introduced so much variation into this node, into this style scatter, right? Like my variance is set to 2 in the y direction, and the sizes I messed a lot with these settings to get something really crazy, and so I get a lot of shapes that are fairly squished, and some are like stretched, and there are these little patterns here, and like little shapes, little white shapes. And so the result is like a quite varied wood. I don't know how realistic this is. I don't know how realistic this kind of thing is. It's kind of messy, right? But since we are going to vector warp this, we are going to cut this up per tile and shift it around. No one's gonna see this, but you get a fairly convincing large fiber pattern, at least to my mind. So I like this method better. Okay, so that's the basic idea behind all this. I'm just gonna drink a little bit. All right. So, yeah, moving on. Now, so as I said, this is the basic pattern. Now, I haven't really figured out a good way of introducing more directionality that would really follow this sort of warped pattern. It would be fairly difficult, so I try to do most of the warping after the fact, so that I can still like kind of warp the noises, like medium scale noises, medium scale directional noises, um, the same, at least a little bit, in the same manner as this like large pattern. Does it make sense? Like what I don't want to do is to introduce all the noises before any warping, because that would be super difficult to control and these parts would be insanely noisy. And I don't even know how we would get the gradient map working in that case. But I still want to introduce like a lot of variation that's sort of like the size of maybe one third of the texture or something like that, 1/5 of the texture, and then warp it all together. So that's what's happening in the next step. Let me show you. So yeah, I just sort of leveled out our knots a little bit. I don't even remember what that does. What do we have here? So we have opacity mask. Oh yeah, I skipped an important step. Let's go back. Right. So tiny fibers, or like medium-sized fibers, this kind of thing. So there is this node called tile unstructured, and if you set it to Voronoi, blending mode to maximum, and then you use just 1, you have to override the settings here. If you set it to 1 and some really high number here, you basically get a more interesting anisotropic noise, right? Like we have anisotropic noise, like this, and you have a lot of settings there. But this doesn't blend too well. You have to blur it and stuff. This is interesting because you're still scattering a shape or like an image. And this gives you quite a bit of control. So I have another gradient linear and some curves to change the brightness a little bit. It doesn't really matter too much what you do here, as long as it creates some some interesting patterns, right? And then you just do this tile unstructured with the settings I showed you. And there's another one set to 512, so that's like really fine, really small lines. And then what I do, I take an actual anisotropic noise, basically just stripes with different colors with some randomization and luminance. Then I grayscale to mask it and use it as a mask to blend these two together. So you will have like some of it will be super fine, some of it will be a bit thicker. Gives you a bit more variation. You could also do something else. You could like average it, you could screen it, whatever you like. But I like this result. I think I also saw this in the reference material from the library. All right, I'm doing this again with another anisotropic noise. This time I'm just like introducing some basically color variation. Really, like it's height variation, but in the end it's mostly going to be color variation. And another anisotropic noise to top it off, right? So we have like a lot of lines, a lot of fine detail, and that's gonna be these like fine fibers. Okay, I'm just adjusting the direction, and then I'm using this mask from before to warp it, right? So we get it starts following the pattern a little bit, at least a little bit. It's not the same because I can't use as high a value because then it starts creating like weird artifacts, but it's good enough. It like suggests that the wood is like moving together or like grew together, obviously. Right. So I'm taking this map and blending it in a little bit, so you can see that we start creating this like fine fibers there. The issue, of course, is that it like doesn't make sense here because it doesn't warp around it. That's why I'm like being very subtle with it. I don't want to overdo it. I just want a suggestion. Like here, you can see it. Like that's really unconvincing. That's not what it looks like at all. But there's only so much you can do. So that's that. Then again, I'm using another anisotropic noise instead of that like dial structure, unstructured, just blurring it and using that as a directional warp intensity input. And I'm mostly using directional warps like in the direction of the fibers. I don't want to mess up too much with the like warpiness of it. I just want to introduce a little bit of variation, a little bit of like pulling, imperfection, right? Like this is the result I'm looking for. Like this like wobbly line. I don't want to do like crazy up and down distortion. That doesn't make sense, yeah. All right. So yeah, that's that. Why do we have a safe transform? Oh yeah, I'm actually scaling it down a little bit. I thought it gave like a more convincing pattern. Again, it doesn't matter that it's like so obviously tiling because we are going to cut it up with vector warp. All right, some more warping. Just Berlin noise this time. So this time I actually introduce a little bit of like vertical warpiness. I think it's like becoming a bit more natural this way. It's not as parallel, I guess. This warp, another Berlin noise from before, just a little more. Okay. And now we start adding like medium-sized, or maybe not even medium-sized, like small scale details. So I just take one of those tile unstructured and use it again as a intensity input for the warp, and you can see that what it starts doing, right? Like it starts introducing these imperfections, and it doesn't look too good if you look at it from up close, but it actually goes a long way to introduce it in introducing like convincing sort of breakup of the superfine, like super defined edges of the knots. Again, like at this point, I'm not too happy with how the interior of the knots, they are basically just stains or like spots. Would need more, but I didn't want to spend too much time on it. Like knots are actually really time consuming. I was mostly concerned with the overall wooden feel of the material. Anyway, yeah, so you start like getting almost like individual pixels, individual lines will get distorted, and they get pushed left and right, and so it starts creating a noisy pattern that you can see in the reference. I don't know, here for example. I don't know how much. I don't know if you can see it, right? Like there are these like super fine fibers like blending in with the other sort of color section of the wood. I really don't have the words to describe wood. Oh, hello. I don't know how you guys understand how to make these textures. This stuff looks like magic to me. Okay, well, I don't know. It's just you have to know what's available to you in the software, and then you have to be very meticulous about how you like break down the various aspects of your reference into like possible workflows from the software, right? And then it's a lot about fine tuning and like blending a lot of effects together. So it's if this is like your first material or something, this might be a bit like advanced, right? But if you do something, let's say simple, something more geometric, something more regular, maybe some I don't know, bricks or tiles or something really noisy, maybe some concrete material or your plaster, stuff like that, and you just experiment with different noises and different notes and see what they do, maybe following a tutorial, then eventually you will build up your knowledge base, and it will become second nature. But I'm not gonna lie to you, I've been doing this for I guess a year and a half, and I still consider myself a beginner. I'm just like exploring what's possible, and InstaMAT is great in that you have a huge accessible library that you can explore. So when you look at these materials here in the library, there are like hundreds of them. You know, a lot of them are actually just versions of another material, but that's okay, right? Like, because you can see that like how much is possible if you set up your material correctly and if you expose a few parameters, and how much you can actually get out of a single graph, out of a single procedural material. You can get many different looks, and you will start to understand how it all comes together. So it's just like all practice, you know. Of course, if you just see like a weird image like this and like wonder how it becomes something like this, yes, then it looks like magic. But you know how the saying goes, right? Like advanced enough technology looks like magic to people who don't understand it. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact wording, but yeah. If you're interested in proceduralism, in procedural generation of textures, I definitely can recommend it to you. I find it very rewarding, and it's interesting, right? Like you use something that's fairly abstract to emulate fairly realistic materials, and I find that exciting, I guess. Hopefully that that will motivate you a little bit. But thank you for coming to the stream as well. Anyhow, enough of a rambly motivational speech. Where was I? Yes, I was showing these like small displacements, right? Small distortions. And again, like I do this a couple of times, right? Like I take basically different versions of anisotropic noises, you know, like maybe a slow blurred version. This one is actually really nice. I took a anisotropic noise, auto leveled it just to get a bit of more range, and then I slow blurred it with itself using the maximum node. And this looks pretty woody to me, you know? It's like, of course it needs a bit more distortion and stuff, but that's happening down the line. So I just blur it a little bit to remove some of the really sharp lines there. And yeah, I use it again for the directional warp, introducing more of that damage and variation. Yes, and basically we keep doing the same. Here I'm just blending in some directional noise. Here I'm doing the same, I think. This is like a really fine tile unstructured, this time with like a gradient symmetric. It doesn't really matter, it's just to introduce a lot of variation there. And I'm doing that with a mask, right? Like it's basically a combination of an anisotropic noise with some of the knots from before, really blurred, really warped, right? Like you can see what I did there. It's just these spots that get blended in, or actually used as a gradient input for this. Yeah, so just trying to avoid these huge spots that we have in the materials to introduce a bit of a more natural flow. Yeah, then I sharpen it because it was starting to look a bit blurry, and it introduced even more of this like super fine speckled noise, which I liked. Right, I thought I was like getting in the sort of in the vicinity of what the color might look like on wood. And even some more warping. Like all of this is set to a fairly low setting, right? Like I'm not doing anything crazy with it. I don't want to distort it too much, just a little bit. And that just introduces a lot of these like fine transitions that basically like introducing noise here and there, breaking up the super straight lines. Nothing too crazy. You can see what it does well. Like instead of having a polar or a like circular pattern here, I just get lines, but I couldn't be bothered at this point. All right. So moving on. Yes, here I just like begin introducing super fine and like really fine details. Not the finest details yet, but fairly detailed noises, or like fairly high frequency noises. Again, some slow blurs Slow blurs with directional noises will give you a solid wood basis, right? If you do something like this, so I think that's what is it actually? Yeah, it's one of the tiles unstructured with a bit of warping. Then I think I blended it in with the height map that we had from before. It doesn't really matter. Again, it's like a lot of directional noises and isotropic noises. And then I'm slowing it with itself using a maximum node. And that creates something fairly crazy like this, right? Like it looks, it's full of artifacts, but it doesn't matter because if you blur it, it starts looking like wood. So I like this workflow. It's very easy actually to create a grunge map like this. So like from time to time, especially on Discord, people complain that there aren't enough grunges in InstaMAT. I think it's super easy to create grunges in InstaMAT. So yeah, like you just take maybe two directional noises, one anisotropic noise, do some warping, a little bit of warping, blend it together. I'm using the difference. It's just a crazy blend mode, right? And then you slow blur it and maybe blur it. And you already have like wooden directional noise. Of course, it's not the best yet, but you know, you can just add some more settings, maybe some more nodes, maybe some different noises, and you will get something fairly convincing very quickly. I think it takes about, I don't know, 15 minutes to create a grunge map like this, and you can then tweak it and have it ready for whenever you need it in your other projects. So definitely, it's like it takes a bit of work to set up your library of different grunges and you know, textures like this, but then it just builds up on upon itself. All right. So more details. So yeah, if you take something like clouds heavy and adjust the scale for each axis separately, you will get a different kind of directional noise. You know, so you are not limited to the directional noises that are in InstaMAT by name. Yeah, then I just directional warp it with itself. You can see it just creates a bit more of a variation. Again, something that is maybe more reminiscent of wood instead of just like digital noise. Yeah, blending it in. So we get a grunge map like this. I should actually save this. Maybe that's like a good enough grunge map um, for another project. And I blended in just average, right? So if we look at before, we get like a fairly separated pattern here, and then at the end, it sort of all blends together a bit more. So before, after. Alright. I do this one more time, so I get this super high frequency clouds heavy, 32 by 1024, and just blend it in. And that gives us like super, I'm actually subtracting it, like it gives us a really like rough wood pattern. I don't even bother warping this. I don't think it's necessary. It's such a high frequency thing that like, you know, no one's gonna see it. I could do it. I could take the gradient, the gradient like this. Maybe even like do some of the operations again, but it seems like an overkill for such a high frequency noise, right? Again, the issue is that like you get this gradient at the beginning, but then once you apply the gradient map, and whatever processing you do after that would have to be applied again to this gradient, which is a problem with this workflow, right? Since it all flows into this one gradient map, you lose the information essentially. So like all this warping and slow blurring and blending would have to be either repeated or like selectively repeated again for this map, for this mask, to be used later down the line. But that's I don't know if it's worth it. Anyway, yeah. So we have like really high frequency noise here. I'll subtract it. Okay, what else is there? Yeah, sorry, I don't remember it that well because it's been at least a month. But what do we have? Transform. All right. So now I'm starting to think about introducing like I think at this point I'm thinking, you know, the basic wood pattern is there. We have the fibers, we have the superfine noise, we have the knots. It's sort of blending together. I'm almost ready to start cutting it up with the vector warp. Uh, but maybe there's something missing, right? Like maybe I need some more information that will be used to drive the color, because otherwise it's going to be fairly uniform, and I will not have good enough masks to look at it. So to look at to use for the color creation. So yeah, I'm basically taking a few noises, just a Berlin noise, again a bit stretched, terrace noise. Terrace noise is nice for many things. In this case, it's like naturally giving us almost this like knotted, fibrous look naturally. That's something I liked, and I'm just creating an anisotropic noise to drive some of the warping here. And so I blend it together again using a difference, like a crazy blending mode, which creates this. Now you may ask, what the hell? Well, I'm going to show you the hell. First, I basically directional warped it using this anisotropic noise. So you can see this is almost like vector warp. In fact, it's a cheaper version of vector warp. Each plank or each row that will eventually become the planks gets shifted a little bit, just to introduce some variation. Then I blur it to remove the super sharp line, obviously. And then I'm using the gradient map workflow again, or trick again. So I have two gradients. One is like medium detailed, and this is like a very high frequency detail. And I'm using these. Sorry, actually using this and this. I'm using this blurred version, these gradients to drive this. So we get something fairly chaotic, right? This doesn't look like wood, but don't worry, it's gonna get processed, and it's going to be used as various masks. So I do this twice, and it's the same pattern. That's actually quite important. It has to be the same pattern, otherwise it will not work as you know, for your material too well. Anyhow, yeah, we just do some blending together, so you can see that I get this. I use the maximum running mode, and so I get these lines that are not as frequent, but sometimes you get quite a bit there. Yeah. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, because you still haven't seen what it's for. So let me just fast forward. We just do a lot of warping, a lot of distortion. This is what we get by the end of it. And again, like, it's starting to look like noise, right? Sorry, like wood noise, because of all the directionality, because of all the distortion and all the blurring and stuff. And I actually use this to drive 3 different masks using histogram selects. And I'm using that to isolate these little lines here and there. That will drive some color variation. And so if we look at the reference here, for example here, yeah, you can see these like brown parts here, or this, right? And you can see that there is like a stripe pattern going through. So we already set this up a little bit with our gradients from before, but I wanted more. And I wanted to be able to sort of like isolate a part of the wood, like here, for example, and say, you know, this is going to be darker or lighter or whatever, right? Like here you can, like, there is like a stripe that might be white almost, and there is a stripe that's almost black. And so these are the masks that sort of were supposed to do that. Not sort of, that were supposed to do that. So I'm just blending it in randomly, and you can see like there's a whiter part and here and there. And like, it doesn't matter that it doesn't copy the pattern exactly, because we are just blending it in. I'm using modes such as blend, add, or maximum, or subtract, or something like that. And it's going to be driven at low enough opacity. It's going to mostly stay based on the original pattern that I'm taking from before. Yeah, so this is like before, and this is after. Oops, this is not after. This is after. And you can see I just get like a few white spots here and there. And you wouldn't be able to tell that it's just like a completely different mask. Again, this is a noisier version of the one before. Just isolating some interesting part using a histogram select, and blending it in using some Berlin noise so that it's not everywhere. And this adds like this like very grainy noise. So again, let's check it out. Like before, I hope you can see it. Look here. After, yeah, we get these like super grainy lines here and there, and you can see it like sort of copies some of the brighter parts here and there. So I like that. And one last time, same idea. This time I'm subtracting, so we are introducing like dark parts. So before and after. Yeah. Okie dokie. What is this? I guess I'm creating one last map here. This one is at first I think I tried edge detect, but it wasn't good enough. It had a lot of artifacts at a certain resolution, at a certain like high enough frequency. Your edge detects won't work, obviously. So one way to do this is to use the histogram select, right? So I'm looking at this map. Oops, again, save transform. It's killing me. So I'm looking at this really like map of lines, and I'm just choosing some of the lines using histogram select. Blurring it, maybe beveling it a little bit, not necessary. Directional warping it a little bit, I don't know why. It's such a low, okay, input. It's just like to introduce a little bit of variance, not that important. Doing that again with the stone noise, I guess. This really like makes it maybe too stony almost. It's starting to look a bit like some marble or something. That's the danger of stone noise. Everything will be a bit like stone. Yeah, just distorting it. And these are going to create some black lines here and there. I don't know, again, like how much you can see. I saw something like that in some other references that I don't have anymore. But yeah, there were like some weird fibers that went against the grain. I don't know how that happens, but yeah, I like the detail, so I put it in. Okay, so more directional noise. This time it's just a grunge based on crystals noise. More or less the same workflow, right? Like I slow blur it with itself, and then I just warp it a little bit, warp it again, blur it, blend it in. And this creates a mask actually for some really noisy noise from before. Yeah. So if we look at before and after, it's just color variation. It's not too significant, but all of this like builds the effect up as usual. Okay, same idea here. I'm going to skip all these like super fine details. Now, using a grunge map that's by default in InstaMAT. It's called Correct grunge map. I was mostly interested in these shapes, in the cracks shapes, right? But I didn't want this kind of grunge to be like, it doesn't look like wood at all, right? I didn't want that. So yeah, doing a lot of blurring, a lot of distortion and stuff. So I end up with something like this, and this will drive one of the like, I think, discoloration map later on. I don't know if I can show, right? Like, so notice the white things that appear here, right? Those are basically the cracks. and it starts to look like this, right? These large cracks or white scratches or whatever this is. Yeah, this was mostly what I was going for. Okay. And yeah, some more fine noise, color variation. I just blended in some fractal sum to introduce like overall variation before, after, nothing special. Do that again with some other noise, I don't remember, doesn't matter, and sharpen it at the end. Yeah, and when you sharpen it, it's like really like going to pop with auto levels and sharpen, and you see like how much noise there is. It's really noisy, really grainy. It looks like wood. And the waves that we had at the beginning that looked almost too digital, too artificial, they are not as prominent anymore. And at this point, you have a suggestion of like a nice flow of the fibers, but at the same time, it's like drowned in the noise a little bit. And that was the look I was going for. So at this point, we are basically done. This is a height map for sure, but it's mostly a basis for the color map. All right, so I'm just gonna take a break again. All right, yes. So what remains is to create the color map, the roughness map, and then displace it using flat flow to random direction based on the planks, right? So this is our planks map, just a break generator, nothing too special, just a bit of variance here and there. Then I take a few flat flow to random directions, obviously remove these lines here using the distance node. Nothing we haven't seen before, okay? So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You can check some of the other streams. And I have a noise repository here, just a few noises that I will be reusing again and again. So just the crystals noise, Berlin, fractal sum, obviously, clouds heavy, like the usual suspects. All right, so we also want to take a few masks for color variation mostly. So I'm taking a flat flow to color, and I'm using the color version this time really, and using this channel split to get 3 or 4 different masks. I have shown this technique before. I'm not sure where. I think when I was creating the maybe the tiles pattern. I don't remember, but yeah, you don't need to make like 3 different flat flow to color grayscales to get your mask. You can just use one and then channel split it, and this will give you enough variation. You can then use histogram select. You can then use grayscale to mask to create your separation. Okay, and so the most important part here is the vector warp. I have used the node before. What it does, it takes an image. In this case, it's going to be our wood mask. And based on a directional map, which is just a vector map, ideally made with something like flat flow to random direction, because it uses only the colors that drive the UV directions, right? There are 2 gradients, green and yellow and red, if I'm not mistaken, for each axis. And so these are like colors that are on one of those gradients that that are defined by the UV space essentially, and that will tell the program by how much it should shift that particular area of the image, and by how much to displace it. So it looks at the image, it samples the image, right? It looks at this, then takes a cutout and basically pushes it in one of the UV directions specified by the color. So that's also why you want to remove these lines in the middle, because that will create artifacts. That will basically be a different part of the image that gets displaced. So that's the vector warp, and you can already see we get blanks, right? Randomly scattered, and so on and so forth. So I did it twice. Once for just the original image, then I transformed this one, basically flipped it around so it's 180 degrees rotated, and I used another vector transform. I wanted to have a little more variation this way. I wanted to have it flipped. It looked a bit, because of the waves, they are so recognizable, I wanted to break that up a little more. And I just blend it together using this mask from the channel split here. Yeah, so that's it. I think if I didn't do that, it wouldn't be that noticeable. By the time I was staring at this material, I was like, oh my god, I can see it, you know. And then if I can see it, it's like I should probably break it up. Of course, I can see it because I made it, right? It's always this balance of like, aren't you fixating on something that no one's going to notice? But yeah, I thought this is going to be tiled quite often, like quite a bit, maybe 2, 3, 4 times, and that's when these like large scale repetitions really come out. So I didn't want that to be too noticeable. All right, so that's that. What else do we have here? Okay. Now, so this is just about detailing, really. So I get I noticed that my reference had like scratches here, for example, these white things, and most of all, maybe it wasn't in this image, but there were like super fine yet like very prominent scratches across the whole wall or the whole floor. Yeah, here, if you can see it here on the right, like these lines here and there. And I wanted to have that as well. So again, it's just directional noise, some kind of directional noise. This time it's clouds heavy. Blend it together. You know, I create something like this. It looks almost like some drips or something like that. Iterate it, blend it together with some noise. By the way, I learned that there is this blend dissolve blend. Essentially what it does, it dissolves your image over a background, and that background is defined by some noise you can specify here. It's a cheaper node than actually doing it like this and bring in another noise. Of course, this gives you more control, this approach with like a regular blend and your custom noise, but you know, performance. So this is just clouds heavy, so it's not a big deal, but you know, yeah. So I get something like this. I get these like scratches here and there, just distort it a bit more using some masks, and yeah, and I'm just going back and adding it here so that it gets distorted by or displaced by the vector warp as well. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's like it's there. Trust me, it's there. We are going to use this later for the color masking. Okay. Right. So a point on like the order of operations. So you could theoretically work on the color after the displacement, but that would be really difficult because you would have to do the vector warp thing for every mask, right? So it's actually much easier to base your color on the undisplaced map and the masks you had before. Yeah, so like I'm reusing a lot of the information I made here. I'm using that again to drive the color. And then I'm using the same operation, the same vector displacement on the color as well. And the same goes for roughness. So yeah, I just, as usual, I just isolate a few masks, height to ambient occlusion, the height map from before, height to curvature, which is going to give you like a super fine mask, some of the grunges from before, some of the directional noises, the cracked mask, all of that gets reused to drive the color. Now, I think I made that stream where I was working on this, so you can see me actually trying to figure it out live. If you go back in the history, you can find it there. But essentially, what I do, I use the gradient map workflow. I didn't really care about like how controllable, adjustable the material is going to be. I just wanted something that looks good. It was, again, it was an experiment, so I just manually picked a lot of colors from my references, and then did some adjustment here and there. So I start with two solid colors, basically like one of the brighter colors and one of the darker colors, blended in using one of the masks that gives you a basis, a base of, which you can then start like iterating upon. Again, bringing in more noises. You know the workflow by now. Just stack in the noises. All right. Another gradient map, this time one of the dark colors or some of the dark colors, blending in with some apparently some clipped clouds heavy, blended over a histogram select of the height map apparently. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I mostly wanted to isolate the knots, but I also like that it sort of darkened the wood everywhere else a little bit too. So yeah, that's the mask I'm using. Whoa, whatever happened here? Okay, yeah. So that's darkening these parts. So before very white, here quite dark. I'm doing something similar again, different mask. I just used this gradient map and darken it using guided HSL this time with some noises, I imagine. Oh, with the height map. No, this is the ambient occlusion map. It doesn't really matter, right? Like at this point, we have a really noisy image, and we just try to like target different values at different points to get variation. So yeah, more dark stuff. Then I decided I needed some more of darkening for the fibers. Again, histogram select. This is something that's a bit funny because if you change the the height map, it's going to propagate here. So I've spoken about this a couple of times. Don't do this, right? Like don't make your colors and your roughness too dependent on your height map. And histogram select is definitely one of the nodes that is super dependent on whatever you input into it, right? So, but I was just like rushing, I wasn't really thinking too much about what's going to happen if I need to go back and change stuff. So this is not like recommended, but I was just like developing the look at this point. So just a couple of masks, and so this is before, and this is after. You can see that we get a lot more definition in the fibers, and a lot more like dark stains here and there. Okay, more of the same. Another gradient map, another blend, another noise map here and there. Okay, yeah, some guided HSLs to drive like various aspects of the material, some color variance essentially. Yeah. Again, taking some directional noises, taking a mask from before, using histogram select, a gradient map, basically the same thing over and over again. Yeah, I don't really know what to tell you about this because it's more of the same over and over again. Okay, so up until now, I was mostly introducing darker colors and darker tones because that's what I saw in my reference. Here I'm going to start adding a bit more of the brighter colors. Yeah, nothing much to talk about. And then I start adding the details from before. Like if you remember these masks, the 3 masks I discussed, this is what's coming in now. Yeah, I'm basically going to start introducing this noisy, wavy pattern into it. Where are we? Can't see anything, huh? Yeah, here. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about this. It's just I'm either using it as a mask to blend it in some different colors, or I'm using it to drive the guided HSL to sort of create a range of color variation based on this map. Okay, again more of the same. Some average color blended in using this crazy map from before. And then I get these like weird things. If you remember, we had these like marbly pattern there. I'm just blending it in, but I didn't like what it looked like unbroken. So I basically blended it with a turbulent Berlin noise to sort of hide it. It's still there, and it's going to get displaced by the vector warp, so you won't be able to see that it's like so continuous. Okay, yeah, adding the vertical scratches with some fairly bright color because that's what I saw in my reference. So it's this. Here you can definitely see it. Like, you know, it was scratched. Someone maybe walked on it, maybe dragged something across the floor. And in fact, actually, this is something that may be better if it's like not distorted by the vector warp. Maybe add it after that. Just a suggestion, depending on what you're going for. Oh yeah, and here I start adding these super like gray, dark colors. Again, if I show you the reference, basically these colors right here. Okay, some fine fiber color variation. That's not that interesting. Yeah, I used some of the. I used the correct grunge map and some crazy eroded moisture grunge map with some adjustments to create something like this. It looks a bit wooden, I guess, like something like bark. I don't know. I was just like trying to get something as quickly as possible. I wasn't really like developing the grunge too much. I just wanted something to be used for the gradient map, right? And this is driving some sort of discoloration effect for the wood. So if you look at this, that's before, and after, you just see that like in parts it's going to be much more desaturated, much brighter. Yeah. Then I decided to add a bit more grunge. So I'm taking some of the masks from before and just like blurring it and doing some distortions to it. And in the end, I end up with something like this. So it looks like maybe some of the planks are a bit, I don't know, a bit more used, a bit more worn down. Just using a dark map for that. Okay, okay. And that's it. Then we are doing the vector warping, right? So I'm bringing in the distance nodes and doing the same operation I did for the height. And I'm gonna be doing the same for the roughness. And that's it. That's like pretty much almost the final color map. I'm just gonna be adding some more details that are like independent of the vector warp for each plank. So like overall grunge. Now, I showed you already, right? Like if we tile it a couple of times, I was playing around with this effect that you know, one side of the floor of the wood would be maybe darker than the other, but that doesn't make much sense if you tile the texture, right? So this is entirely like wrong, or at least optional. Again, I was just experimenting with like what it would look like if I tried to add some color bias to one side or the other. The result is that it creates a grid, and that doesn't look very good, does it? Right? So I would avoid that. In any case, it's fairly easy if you want to create something like a directional mask to do it on a flat surface without taking in the world position or anything like that that maybe you need to bake on your mesh. You just create whatever noise you want and a gradient linear and blend it together using a multiply. right? That will give you like black to whatever the noise you want. Then I just leveled it, created more contrast, and subtracted some more grunges from it. And then I actually used to make seamless, because if you do this, you will have a super sharp seam here, right? It will be just a straight line, and then it's really going to look awful if you tile it. So you do not want to do that, so make seamless. Basically, it blurs the edges and wraps the texture around itself. Yeah, gradient map, blend in. So here we are adding this like brownish color to the right side of the image. Then I do something similar, except for these like desaturated burnt colors on the other side of the image. Yeah, blend in, and that creates this banding here. So I would definitely avoid it. Okay. Then we are just doing some color variation using guided HSLs. Again, I've talked about this quite a few times before, so I'm not gonna repeat myself. You can watch some of the other streams, but yeah, essentially you take a map, it drives where the effect takes place, and then you specify a range by how much it's going to shift the hue, saturation, or luminosity. Yeah, I thought that maybe I needed to like get back some of the brighter colors, so I just did a histogram select, a random histogram select. Really, I didn't care too much about what it was. I just wanted to introduce some more like whites, and some like adding some more whites in some of these places. It's like creating contrast, especially for these like wavy fiber lines. Then I add the scratches, overall scratches. So these are scratches that were made, that happened like after the planks were put in place, so they shouldn't be displaced by the vector warp. So they really like go over maybe like here, for example, right? Like it crosses the borders of individual tiles, of the individual plank tiles. And I end up adding a bit of edge wear. This is actually too unbroken for me. I don't love this. So normally I would blend this with some more noise. I don't know why I didn't do that. I think I just forgot. So normally, like, you don't want this is like really going in stylized directions. If you do something like this, it really emphasizes the contours, emphasizes the outline of the material, and you're moving in the stylized direction. So I would just multiply another noise over this to break it up. Yeah, so this is what we get. We get like brights along the edges. I don't even know if that's like a good idea. I added it anyway. All right. Then we are also doing something about what's going to be inside the gaps. So I think I have some noise going on in there. Nothing too much, just a little bit. And I just take it as a gradient map and yeah, and throw it in. In fact, it should probably be even darker because my reference has like mostly super black and thin lines in between the planks, but this is what I have here. And my faithful, trusty color variants. Again, I've spoken about this a billion times. It's a fairly self-explanatory node. All right. Yeah. I think I'm going to skip the roughness map this time. Again, it's the same technique as always, just using solid colors to drive the and the different masks that I have for my color and for my height, and just specify a certain value for each of these aspects of the material, and I just keep blending it to keep blending it. The only difference here is that I have to use the vector warp as well so that it follows, and it has to be the same setting, yeah, the same value for every single of these transforms, so that it corresponds to each other. That's it, really. So I'm gonna skip that. That would take too much time. Yeah, I'm doing a bit more funny stuff with the height. So first of all, I'm trying to get the height to the range that I think it should be. So I'm using a histogram shift for this and levels. Basically, I'm squishing it so that the displacement is only like 3%. And that's going to be like the 3% is going to be the surface detail here, not the entire displacement, the surface detail. So it's really not much, right? In fact, it could be like 1% if it was really like polished or what's it called, sanded, right? Like sandpaper or whatever it's called in English. So yeah, 3%, and then I shift it a little bit towards the white so that I get some range, recover some range for the holes here, right? Like for the lines, the gaps in between, and the dirt that goes into them. All right, then I just start introducing some height variation, subtle height variation. So I just took one of the masks from the flood filter color and basically added 5%. So you can see like some of it is going to be a bit higher, some of it is going to be a bit lower. Then I also do the usual, right, flood filter gradient, so it gets a bit of a slope. So it's not as flat, you know, so some of it will be like slightly tilted. I'm not doing too much with it. Like it looks like it's very contrasty, but I'm actually just adding like again 5%, 6%. It's not too much. So if I show you on the, for example, on the plane, and we look like this, it's like you can barely see it. It's there. The variation is there, but it's just not that prominent. Okay, and you can definitely see the bending here. So don't do the color thing I did with the like one side of the of the tile just being colored. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, like I don't know if, yeah, trust me, it's there. It doesn't have to be much, right? This is a fairly solid material on a solid foundation, so you don't need to overdo it. But a little bit goes a long way, I guess. All right. Yes, here I'm adding the gaps again, subtracting them so that we get like a full 0 here, like a complete 0, because this is going to be used again. As you can see, I'm using this 100 times as a mask, both for the damage and the dirt and some other effects there. Okay, then I created this like crazy grunge made out of whirly and crystal noise. It's something that doesn't need to be too great. It just creates some spots here and there, and that will drive the slow blur here, which will again drive these edge defects. But as you can see, the mass is not great, and yeah, I like this time I would definitely use different noises and maybe a different approach. Now, one thing to do here is definitely to vector warp your grunge before you use it on the slow blur, because otherwise this damage will cover the whole all of the tiles, right? So you need to separate like it will be on both sides of the gap, and that doesn't look very good. It looks exactly like what it is. It looks as if you slapped a noise on your texture. So it's much better to get the whatever noise you're going to use to slow blur and to vector warp it with the tiles, so you get something like this, and then the effect will be isolated to pretty much just one of the tiles. Yeah. Again, a technique I used before. You can look it up in the floor tiles stream. Okay, so blending it in, actually subtracting it, so because it's the edge wear defect here, but you can see it doesn't look that great, not perfect. But the technique is good. What isn't good is the kind of noise I used. Okay, so maybe this time I would use again crystals, but maybe don't do this, right? Like this doesn't make sense. This is too noisy. So this directional warp with the clouds whirly doesn't make sense for this kind of effect. I struggle with this. I struggle with creating like sharp edge defect masks. I don't exactly know which noises work that well for this. I think crystal noise is definitely the way to go, but maybe the second one is a bit better, or maybe some sort of distorted Voronoi pattern. Anyhow, yeah. More masks, more like more slow blurring, more edge defect, right? I'm creating these crazy masks to drive some of the edge defects. Again, subtracting it. This time I'm subtracting only like 4%. It probably won't show that much, but it's there. It's there, and it will show in the height map a little bit. So let me find it. It's like right here. I can't see it actually. Here, it's there. There's like a little bit of damage there on the planks. Maybe if we crank it up, yeah, you can see what it does right here. Like it's actually too much. That's why I only used a little bit. It's not the best mask. Maybe 10% is fine. Yeah, not the best mask. More of the same. More edge breakup using vector warps, noises, purlins, stuff like that. This is like super fine edge wear that we are going to blend in here and there. This whole thing I would probably throw away and start over if I were to actually polish this material into something that's like nice and usable. It's not the best method. Anyhow, what do we have here? Some directional noise, some grunge. I think this is just to drive a bit more height variation and color variation down the line. Some more grunges, spots, isolated, vector warped. Nothing special. Scratches. Again, it doesn't look like there is anything, but it's there. Trust me. So my typical scratches workflow: scratches 3, a lot of luminance variation. You can look at the settings here that I just iterated, so it adds these super fine ones as well. Maybe some distortion, not too much, and sharpen. Sharpen brings it out. Here you have scratches, and you can just blend it in, and you will have scratches, right? Scratches. You don't need to subtract too much, maybe 5% is enough for something like this. Of course, it depends on the ranges you are using in your material. All right, and so this sort of post-processing, tile post-processing, then goes into the masks for the color and the roughness again. Yeah, I'm just taking a few more like height to curvatures and height to ambient occlusions, just to get some more new information. Here you can really see how much edge damage we introduced with the height to ambient occlusion, which emphasizes it. So that's what we have. But of course we don't want such a crazy effect. So I'm just leveling it out, blending it with the height to curvature, so we get a fairly nice mask for the color. Okay. Yeah, I already spoke about this. What is this? Oh yeah, and I'm just using dirt to drive some of the dirt inside it. You can't really see it, especially not at 2K. At 4K it becomes more prominent. But it's just like, again, like your dense noise, your dirt to your clouds, heavy. These are the nodes you want to use for your dirts, and maybe sharpen it a little bit so that you get like really like grains of dirt. Actually, I almost removed it, huh? That's funny. Oh yeah, because I'm using blend height here. I'm just adding like a little tiny bit, maybe like 5%, 2% even, of dirt inside the crevices or inside the cavities. All right, and this is essentially the material. Like I said, it was mostly an experiment. I'm happy with the fibers and with the overall technology, the overall technique that I used at the beginning of the graph. I think this is a pretty good way to go about this. Of course, what I would improve moving forward, I would probably create another sort of what should I call it? Another sort of layer, I guess, and I would treat some of the knots a bit more, right? Like this is not a good looking knot. This is just a stain. We need more definition, more color variation. We need something that looks like a branch stump, essentially, like a leftover branch. So yeah, that's one thing I don't like. So I would probably just take these scatters here, maybe this, and or even just like duplicate this with the same settings or something like that, you know. And I would have to think about it, of course, how to make it scatter on like on the same place. Maybe use guided scatter with these, so that it only like appears where these circles appear. I would have to think about how to improve that, and then I would actually make a really nice polar coordinate knot. That's one thing. Another thing, obviously this looks fairly good, but you lose the information over time. The more noises you get, the most like afterwards, the more just crazy noisy it's going to be in these super like dense fiber I don't know what to call it, fiber concentrations around the knots. So and of course, since we are using a lot of directional noises, it's going to sort of destroy the circular shapes of this. So maybe that's something to consider if you're going for something very accurate. But at that point, you're actually looking at maybe creating custom shaders in whatever engine you're using, and using like a how do I put this? Essentially, you're gonna use like a 2.5D texture, yeah, to create like actual layers of wood. That's a different subject. But yeah, that's another thing I don't like. Of course, what I don't like is the edge damage and the thickness of my gaps. I don't love that, and I don't love but that's an easy fix. I just remove the effect, right? Like I remove the effect that makes it look as if it was a grid. So basically, the darkening on the edge, on the sides, would be more like some spots here and there, right? It's still going to show. That's the problem with this like large scale detail. When you start tiling it, it really shows. So you have to be careful. It might be better to just stop at like mid-level detail instead of going for this large scale detail, and just leave it be. Introduce that variation in your game engine using lighting maybe, or like blending some different materials together using vertex painting, for example. Okay, what else should I mention? I think that's it. For an experiment, I was very happy with it. This is actually the second go of this. I started here. I can show it to you, which also turned out fairly well. I think actually the edge damage here is a bit better overall. It feels more natural, but I didn't like the knots at all. But you can see they are a bit more defined. Yeah, I'm not sure what I did here. I don't remember. But it looks really knotty, and the scales are all over the place, and so I didn't like it that much. But it also tiles poorly. It's another thing that doesn't look that great. So that's why I started over. I wanted to start to try that technique. But other than that, it's pretty much the same thing, right? Like here, I'm using just some tile scatters. And I'm using the technique that I found in the InstaMAT library for this one. So you can see that there is no natural flow around the knots, which we got with my technique. Okay. Yeah, I think that's about it. I don't really have any other material to show you right now. So I think I'm gonna take a break from streaming, or maybe I'll just do some like smaller daily projects that I might be able to stream while I'm creating. But I have to start working on my portfolio and looking for a job, so I might be absent at least during the summer. No promises of any other stream, but if you're interested in something, let me know in the chat, of course, or in whatever, in the comments. And yeah, and that's it. Also, sorry if this took too long. Like I said, I'm a bit cooked, a bit tired. It's really warm in here. Even at 3 a.m., it's like 25 degrees. It's crazy. All right then. I'm gonna go play some computer games or something. So have fun. See you around, and best of luck in your InstaMAT adventures. Bye bye.